All right, welcome back. We are Game 3004. That's Mobile Game Development 2 in the winter 2021 semester at George Brown. And it's week 12, part 1 of our broadcast. We're going to do our regular project updates and those kind of things where we are with the course. And then we're going to get right into the lab, which is going to detail things with shader graph today, as well as the universal render pipeline. So those are things that I'm excited about. I'm sure you are too, for those people who haven't done it from the first class. All right, so let's get moving on this. So first things first, where are we? We're sitting at week 12, where it says weather system. This is kind of a placeholder. It should have said really universal render pipeline and shader graph, but whatever. And just to reiterate, next week there will be no standard lab for next week. It'll be a group activity that I will give you guys to do, which is going to be memory profiling for your beta release. So you're going to be using the time together next week. We'll still hold our lecture just to do an update, but for the most part, I will give you instructions on what to do for next week for your group activity, and there's no marks associated with it, but it's going to help you for your beta release. It's one of the requirements for your beta release to do memory and CPU profiling. So that's what's happening next week. All right, so everything is peachy. Everything is awesome. And let's move into what we did last week. So last week, we worked on how to incorporate organic characters into our games in 3D. We used Mixamo to create a very simple zombie character, but it was massive and it was crazy to use. I had to use something called large file support, which was pretty easy to set up, but it actually cost some money to do this, and I did it. I actually paid a little bit of money, $5, for our George Brown College stuff. And you buy packets. I think it's $5 a month to support this. Anyways, I did it because I wanted to show you how you can do it, but eventually I won't need to do it. So that's something that I'll show you how to avoid today. You still need large file support for some packets, but not everything. So that's what we did last week. We also talked about how to put the animation system together with animation clips and so on. I had a very low take again on the total number of people who did the lab, but at least I showed you some concepts that you could use. This week, I wanted to talk about your final release details as well as your final presentation details. I wanted to give it to you a couple weeks ahead, so that way you have everything you need for your, for the stuff that you're doing for this semester. I've kind of already published those up on Blackboard for you, but I want to talk about that. So what about project components that are due? So your 9th weekly report is due on Saturday. That's coming up. Just to note that this weekend and this week, Friday, there's no school because of our Good Friday, Easter break kind of thing. Sunday also, there isn't any school. If people are doing school on Sunday for whatever reason, Sunday is also closed. And if there was something due this weekend, I would have moved it from Sunday to Monday or some other day. But Saturday's okay. Again, other people are celebrating Passover again, I think up until Friday. So there's some religious stuff that's being observed this week, and that's why we're taking it easy on Friday and on potentially Sunday. All right, so that's something that's happening. All right, so weekly report is due today on Blackboard. Thank you. That is not what actually is due today, but I think it's you can do it until Saturday, right? So let me just fix that cap just to make sure that's not cool. So on our course documents, that's under week 12. So I want to make sure that we're good. Issue the weekly report there, and it's supposed to be due today anyway, but I'll move the due date to Saturday, just to give you a couple days to get it done. And again, it's important. Most people are getting this done. I think the challenge is that some people are running out of time or they're forgetting. Again, I mean, the idea here is that it tracks your progress from week to week. It helps you reflect. That's part of the thing that you're doing. So hopefully that'll be, pretty good. Your beta release is due April 11th, as well as your peer review number 5. I do read your peer reviews. I know that some people are, they're not happy with a couple of other people or whatever. I see those things. I see what you've produced, what you haven't done. And I also see comments like no comment. I see those comments too. So I read throughout and I look through all the reports and all that kind of stuff, because it's important. I want to get a feel of how you guys are feeling about each other and so on. So make sure you keep doing that. They are worth marks, both your peer reviews and your weekly reports. And the peer review will play a factor, like I said, in terms of your final grade. So that is what those things are like. Let me also bring up the details really briefly about your final release as well as your final presentation. So the final release, it's the same kind of document you've seen before. It looks like this, and I'm bringing it up now because I want to make sure you guys are good. Again, this is due week 14, Sunday, April the 18th. Again, it's always on Sundays. So very close to the last week of class, I would say. Last week of class, I think we end on the 24th. I think so. 23rd, something like that. Yeah, there we go. So this is like the, kind of just before the last week of class. And what this is pretty straightforward. I mean, there's not much in here except for what it tells you. It says the final release represents the final version of your game. All requirements, common and game type specific, must be met. No additional assets or code will be added beyond this release. This release incorporates all bug fixes and performance adjustments from the beta release, which we'll talk about again next week. And your group will create a 7th official iteration, which is the final one for your game design document. It's split a little differently. And all it is you just updating your game design document and going over the details for your final release. That's it. So that is your final release, but it's worth a little bit more than normal because it's the kind of culmination of your game. It's worth 15% of your final grade, guys. And so that means that everything has to be ready and gone by that. So that's your final release. And I also want to talk about your final presentation, which also should be of interest to you because that is also worth 15% of your final grade. Those two pieces are worth 30% of the grade in this course. To get them done, please, whatever you do not forget to submit those pieces. I cannot mark stuff when I get around to marking everything that is missing. If you're missing something in your submission, and I see some people have started a submission but not finished submissions, if I see some stuff like that, I will, come back to you or whatever, but please do not forget to submit. I want to be able to give you a fair grade. And all that kind of stuff. But in this case, for 15%, this is due week 15. So the very last week of class on the Wednesday. Please make sure, note that is Wednesday, not the Thursday. Thursday is when you're presenting. Wednesday is when your documentation and your video is due for the presentation. Okay, and again, I'm using the presentation video as a backup. Okay, but more than anything else, I can also review it later on. And so I can hear, your thoughts on your game and all that kind of stuff. That's why I'm making you do it. There are 3 parts to this thing that we'll talk about it. One part is your presentation materials, which we've talked about before. The other part is your actual presentation style, timing, clarity, vocal tone, all that stuff that you're going to do when you're presenting live. And then finally, the quality of your game demo, right, which is something that I'm marking you on. So presentation slide deck, you've seen this stuff before. You can actually take a lot of the stuff that you've already presented to me during your checkpoint as well as your initial presentation and incorporate it into here. So, I mean, again, I want to try and cut down the work for you so it's not so crazy. There's nothing really new in these sections other than make sure you hit your target audience. Who is your target audience? Game story, if you have one, I want you to include it there, as well as your game demo should be slipped in just before your lessons learned and your future possibilities. Again, things you've all done before. Future possibilities should incorporate things like your retrospective, which we'll be talking about second last week of class. All right, so that is your PowerPoint slide deck. So the slide deck itself is just the materials. Again, what I'm asking you to remember is that you are making a multimedia presentation, which means that I'm looking for a non business type presentation. I'm looking for more images, less text. Keep your text to your each slide to about 3 bullet points max if you can. That's what I'm asking for this presentation. And talk to it. Have more images. Animated GIFs are okay as well, as long as they make sense with what you're presenting and they support your slide. I'm okay with that. The slides that need details are your title page and your roll slide where it has images of you. Please, I do not want to see avatars or missing images here. You'll lose marks for that, and I don't want to have you lose any marks at all. In this, I would like you to get full marks. Presentation recording and gameplay video is part 2, and basically what you're going to do is you're going to take your slide deck and voice over it. I know we've done this before, and you've done it several times now. With every single time you do a little video for me, so this should be no problem for you. So this is the second piece, but you're also going to actually do your little gameplay video where you're actually going to show me stuff in the device simulator or on the device itself. By the way, it might be a good thing to make a couple of little recordings here. One of them for you're recording your voiceover of your PowerPoint slides, the stuff up here. And the second one is the demo video that you can actually use again during your presentation, your live presentation. Yes, there's 2 videos. One video for the final release, right? Kat, let me finish. So there's 2 videos, one for the final release, and the final release video is going to be details, coding, all that kind of stuff. Not just the demo, but actually I want to know kind of the details of that release, just like we do every single time. Okay, so I don't need you to do it all either. You could spread it out. There's other people on your team that can also talk to the actual code values and everything else. It could be someone else. So, but for your live presentation, you could record a little video for you. I know you could record a little video for yourself that's just for the demo. All right. So in other words, so that you know it's working, the working version of your game, and that way you can reuse it in your live presentation, right? So that way, yes, unfortunately, Michael, I know it's 1 video for week 14 and 2 for week 15. But the only reason for that is because for week 15, what you're going to be doing is you're going to have the final release plus your final presentation, and you could do actually up to 3, right? Because if you think about it, you could make a video presentation of your gameplay. So you have someone do the gameplay, someone else. Let's say, for example, I'm just putting names here, Michael. Let's say, for example, Jesse really loves to show off the gameplay. So Jesse in your team, he does the gameplay. Meanwhile, let's say someone else on your team, they do the actual, let's say you do it. Let's say you do the presentation video itself. So you kind of go through the presentation, talk about your game and all that kind of stuff, right? So maybe that's what you want to do, right? But the demo video you can reuse. Why would you do it twice? So what you can do is you can say, and here's the demo video. And then so you can cut that. And then during your live presentation, you can go right to the demo video with good quality sound, a working game. Why am I saying a working game? Because sometimes what happens is between your final release and your final presentation, you broke your build sometimes, and now you have nothing to show for your final presentation. It doesn't work. Record it working, and this way you have a working version of your game you can show that's already been pre-recorded. We don't have to worry about you launching your emulator. We don't have to worry about you putting it on the device. Is it going to work or not? Just make sure you go through the functionality of your game and really give us a good tour of what it does, okay? And then, so during your live presentation, this piece here, what you're going to do is you're going to have both your presentation materials and your game demonstration, right? And that's it. The only 2 things I'm looking for from a materials perspective for your final presentation are your presentation documentation, your materials, as well as a link to your recording. All right, that's it. And of course, that you each show up on presentation day. That's really important to do as well, because this final presentation takes the place of your final exam in this course. There is no final test or exam. You will not be evaluated if you don't show up. That's how it is. This is the final thing, final. it's kind of a mandatory requirement for this course for you to be there physically unless you have some kind of other reason, medical or otherwise, that's going to prevent you. Okay? You know, to me, Michael, I want you to, you know, you can use more than one presenter if you like, but I think it's really up to you how you set up your team, whatever makes more sense. Can I use the exact same script for the final presentation video as I do for the live presentation? Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm totally fine with that. And I want you to think of it this way, right? Exactly. I don't want you to, it's just there for you to prep and think about you being in a live audience. All right. So I've got you live. I want you to be prepped. I don't want you to do ad hoc or ad lib at all. So the same script to me is perfectly fine. Like to me, that is perfect. Right. So, and it's going to make it stronger, right? Because you're going to go through the script twice. One time when you're physically presenting and another time when you're recording it. Now, I've had some questions too. And here's a question I've had, and I gotta address it. It's not just from you guys, but others. And they've said, what if I record my video, so I do this part really nicely, right? And I don't show up for this part. What happens? Well, it's pretty straightforward. You lose 35 marks out of 100 for this part, right? So that's pretty crazy. It's a big mark loss for you if you don't show up for the final day. Please book it. Make arrangements so you're physically there on the final day of class. Okay, I will know. Whenever you sign into Zoom, I know who's there. I have a report at the end. All right, so please make sure that you're there at the end. If you're not there, you'll lose all your marks for that piece. All right, not for everything, because I mean, I want to be fair too. There's some things, bad things happen to good people sometimes. So if you're not going to make it and it's a medical reason, or if it's a logical reason why you can't be there, please let me know. I'm not a monster. I will try and make arrangements with you or something else, right? But if you don't let me know and you just don't show up, guys, that's bad form. All right. So there's only so much I can do, right? The other thing that I've been asked too is, okay, I've made my really cool presentation video, and you know what? My voice, I'm physically there, but I don't want to physically present. Can I present my video if it's complete on presentation day, as long as my team is there? Tom, why do you care? I have to tell you guys that I'm okay with that too. So if you make a really good video, here's where you can save time, Kat. If you make a really good video that includes gameplay and you want to show me your video during the last week of class, that you've gone through all the materials and everything else and it's solid and it's beautiful and you've spent some time doing it, fantastic. As long as you're there, you let it play and it's one and done. Okay, I don't know if that satisfies you more or less, but it gives you an option. Okay, I'm good with that. Michael says, will we be booking them through the day like before? Yeah, what I'll be doing is because again, we don't have more than an hour of class time. So I want to make sure that everyone has a chance to book in advance. And I'll try and release that as early as I can. So that you have a chance to, and fair enough, that you can book during the time that you have for both lab and or lecture. Okay, we should finish fairly within a good time. I'm going to give you a little bit more time than 10 minutes, just, you know, like normal, so that we have a bit of leeway. But for the most part, it's pretty good. So that is the video requirements. So think about this, right? That means you can again, record it, make it nice. And then during live presentation, you're just physically there. You're just on Zoom, and you're like, "Hi, Tom. Here it is. Here, I'll just turn the video on." You turn the video on. You make it play on Zoom, and it's perfect. I watch the video, then I can ask you questions later, and because there's going to be some Q&A maybe at the end, and that's it. It's perfect if you want to go that way. Or if you don't want to spend time doing that, you can make a video that's fairly decent and be live and present. I'm good either way. Okay, so here's the motivation behind this. Why am I allowing this to happen? Because guys, this final presentation and gameplay video for your game, I want you to think about it as a way of talking to it. If you put this up on YouTube and if it's good enough, you can use this to show other people, right? It's not just for my class, but it's for you, right? This is why I'm making you do it. It's not, I don't want you to suffer from it. I want you to take something out of it, right? So again, it really depends on what you book here, right? How you make this, all right? And it's up to you. If you want to do it here, you can also record this one live if you want. When you're presenting live, you can have a team member, go and record this, but I have a feeling you'll be able to get a better quality recording out of this one. Okay? So that is your final presentation requirements. Any other questions before we move on from this? I've given you both final release details and final presentation details. I want you to know way ahead of time. We're sitting at April 1st. We're talking about the final presentation is like way later, like 15 days from now or 18 days from now, or 17 days from now, whatever it is. And it'll give you a good chance for you to prepare and plan and all that kind of stuff. If you're a planner, this should give you enough time for you to book and do what you need to do. Okay, questions? Any questions around this stuff, the requirements? All right, so that's our project update for today. Let's talk about two more things before we move on to something else. Again, just a reminder next week of the memory profiling and QA test group activity. There's also notice the week after, there's a postmortem and retrospective. It says lab, but it's actually a group activity as well for those two. So you're going to see no formal lab. You're not going to hand in like another project beyond this week. This is the last technical lab you're going to have for the semester, like today, right? So the other two are going to be activities that are going to help you with your final project. Your postmortem and retrospective can be used for your PowerPoint presentation at the end or anything else that you want to use. Okay, so those are the 2 weeks. So over the next 2 weeks, expect a different format for lab time. Okay. Going back to what we're doing today, and then I'll finish off. So this week's lab, what are we doing? We're going to simplify animation by just keeping the clip. I'll show you how to do that. This will help us reduce the file size for our lab. We're going to convert our project to the universal render pipeline, and we'll talk about positives and negatives about doing this. And then we're going to create a shader with shader graph that we're going to use and test on the emulator and our native device. That is what we're doing during our lab, and that lab is going to trigger at 3 o'clock today. Any questions before we move on to what is the universal render pipeline and all that kind of stuff? You should know what it is already. We've talked about it briefly during our VFX brief presentation of what the VFX graph does, which helps us produce things like particle effects and those kind of things. But really, this is kind of something that we're going to move our mobile device into. Great thing is it should be compatible with mobile. And the other great thing is it shouldn't reduce our FPS, right? Our frame rate. So if it doesn't reduce our frame rate, it actually allows us to have more capability on a mobile device than the regular pipeline, which is something we want to move over from. So question that you might have is, so Tom, are you asking us to convert our games to the URP? The question is, if you're going to do so, be cautious, be careful, and make it so that you have a copy of your project that you're working with, or a branch of your repository, because it's going to require some rejigging of all of your shaders, especially if you've downloaded shaders from the asset store that you don't own, that you don't really control. You don't know how it's going to affect your project, right? So be careful, go slow, especially if you've got assets that are not your own. If you try and do this and you expect that everything is going to go smooth and no issues, you're wrong. There's things that need to be done, and we'll talk about some of those things during lab. But what are the advantages? A way better pipeline, a much nicer outcome in terms of the production, of what it's going to look like, and way more capability in terms of flexibility for people who are non-coders and coders alike. Okay, so those are the things that URP provides for us. There are some steps here that I've detailed. I'm not going to go over. They come right from the Unity documentation like normal, and they're all about how to install URP, how to create a URP pipeline asset. We're going to do that together in lab. How to add the assets to our graphic settings, and how to convert or upgrade our shaders, because you're going to have to do that for every shader you have in your project. And this is where I'm saying, please use caution. Okay. All right, that's our update for today. That's the weather. And I'm going to see everyone during your lab session at 3 p.m. unless there's any other questions that you have. All right. That's it, guys. I'm going to stop recording this one, and I'll see you guys at 3 p.m.